Welcome to Too Long to Read Therapist Edition. Today we're going to tackle this article, Hormonal Contraception and Mood Disorders from June of 2022 out of Australia. Now, the study that this paper is written on is pretty small. It actually only contained 49 women, but the article talks about the fact that in this small study of 49 women, that it showed birth control containing a bioidentical form of estrogen, so estradiol, had less side effects in terms of mood changes in comparison to the synthetic estrogen found more commonly in hormonal birth control called this. Now, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this because, we'll save both of us the headache of listening to me try. But this is the synthetic estrogen that's typically found in birth control that is possibly contributing to a lot of negative side effects. I think it's a combination of both the synthetic estrogen and the synthetic progesterone, but that's a different video for a different day. However, what I liked about this paper, even though the study was pretty small, is that it was a deep dive into other studies that connect hormonal birth control and mood disorders like anxiety and depression. Now, the psychological side effects of hormonal birth control is really well known, dating all the way back to their origins. And severe side effects were reported right from the first days of the hormonal birth control studies back in the 50s and 60s. And some of these side effects were resulting in even hospitalization. But many of these reports were dismissed because the racist researchers believed the Puerto Rican women the drugs were being tested on were unreliable. Nonetheless, the side effects resulted in over 20% of women dropping out of the study. What I also liked about this paper was it literally ends with a recommendation that providers believe women who express ideas, thoughts, concerns that their birth control pill is contributing to their anxiety and or depression symptoms. But let's take a look at some of those other studies that they talked about. Now, the first study they cite is this one, and this study acknowledges that the physical side effects of hormonal birth control is well documented, but the psychological side effects are not well described. And then the article looked at this guide published by the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists to illustrate that estrogen and progesterone impact neurochemistry, brain function, neurotransmitters, serotonin, and dopamine. Now, these three studies that they cite show that there is evidence that estrogen protects the brain from neurodegenerative diseases, cognitive decline, and affective disorders, particularly Alzheimer's and schizophrenia. And one of the researchers shows that the estrogen decreases the risk and delays the onset and progression of Alzheimer's and schizophrenia, and that estrogen may enhance recovery from traumatic injuries to the brain, such as a stroke. This study shows that the brain scans indicate estrogen regulates the part of the brain that houses emotional and cognitive processing, including the amygdala, which processes emotions and links those emotions to other parts of the brain that operates memory, learning, and our senses, and prefrontal cortex, which helps us with focus, predicting future events, and impulse control. Now, these three studies that show in animal studies estrogen modulates serotonin and dopamine and neuronorepinephrine in depression. Digging into these studies, it was pretty fascinating because the first one published in 1981, so this one right here, out of New York, it discusses the impact estradiol has on serotonin receptors in the brain. So the U.S. has known about this for almost 45 years. But the funniest part of the study was the final line in the abstract, which I'm going to quote. So it was, quote, "The observation that female sex hormones, are involved in the regulation of serotonin receptors may have an important implication in the understanding of female sexual behavior in the female rat and in the understanding of hormone-linked emotional disturbances in women." Now we have 5 different studies here. All of them indicate progesterone, so we've been talking about estrogen up till now, but progesterone can worsen mood symptoms. Dating as far back as the 1960s and all the way up to 2016, including that they cite a Danish study that looked at over 1 million women and found that those on birth control were at an increased risk of also being given an antidepressant for the first time in their lives. And there is a greater risk of depression for those who are on the depot shot. Now, IUDs has been conspicuously absent in a lot of the research and studies, but this paper looks at a large study published in 2018 out of the UK that showed a positive association between IUDs like the Mirena and depression, anxiety, and sleep problems. Now, with these 3 studies, we're looking at both estrogen and progesterone because these studies suggest that both impact brain function and may be why mood changes and depression are commonly reported. They also reference studies that suggest that we have plenty of evidence that birth control pills lower mood and contribute to depression. However, there's a disagreement on how birth control pills do these things. But studies show that mood changes and an increase in depressive symptoms are one of the most common reasons people stop taking birth control pills. Now, I'm going to wrap up my summary with these final 2 studies that are interesting. However, I'm going to add an asterisk that more research is definitely needed because the one study done in '89 only had 40 participants and the more recent study done in 2013 only had 24 participants, so really small sample sizes. However, both looked at prescribing birth control pills to people experiencing PMDD and showed a positive correlation in a decrease in depression symptoms when taken continuously, so not taking that 7-day placebo pill. All right, so I hope that was helpful in summarizing the articles and summarizing the different studies they cited. And I always laugh because I say I have a love-hate relationship with birth control. It has done a lot for women all across the world, and it has done a lot of harm for women all across the world, including killing them, not to mention the racist origins of birth control. And so I hope that you can be an informed consumer because a lot of doctors don't talk about the negative side effects, especially in the U.S. when it comes to depression and anxiety. It's kind of dismissed or not focused on. So I really hope that people, when they decide to go on birth control pills or IUDs or the Depo shot or the NuvaRing, things like that, that they are able to do their research and understand the drugs that they're taking so they're fully informed and it can be a yes, please, instead of saying, this is what my doctor gave me. All right, thanks.